If you want them to be yours one day, you have to show me you are strong enough to carry them.
Welcome back to Director's Choice. If there's one thing Marvel has done time and time again without fail, it's to include diversity into their storyline. And now, for the first time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've been introduced to an Asian lead, Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu.
Who are you?
Not who you think I am.
Debuted in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, this superhero has one of the most anticipated appearances. In this episode of Director's Choice, we're going to take a closer look at Shang-Chi. What happened to make him a hero that would rather remain unknown? How does his philosophy about the world balance with his exceptional martial arts skill? Let's take a glimpse at the layers of MCU's latest superhero. Here's the breakdown of Shang-Chi's psychology.
You don't like to talk about your life, but a guy with a freaking machete for an arm just chopped our butts in half.
Who is Shang-Chi? The Master of Kung Fu is a son, brother, and friend, but he's also a superhero who doesn't seem to have any superpowers of his own, just super abilities that he had to learn. At first glance, it may seem like there's nothing super special about Shang-Chi. After all, he can't shoot laser beams from his eyes. But there is a lot more to him and his origin. Shang-Chi was born to Xu Wenwu, a renowned crime lord who had actually been alive for thousands of years thanks to the Ten Rings, and Ying Li, a guardian of the Taolo village. Xu Wenwu had his son begin intensive martial arts training at the age of 7, following the death of his mother by Wenwu's enemies. Barely a teenager, Shang-Chi was sent on his very first assassination mission when he was 14.
I trained you. To the most dangerous people in the world.
Overwhelmed with guilt and internal battles, Shang-Chi fled to San Francisco to begin a new life under the name Sean. Shang-Chi grew up as an Asian American in San Francisco, and he worked as a valet alongside his best friend Katie, another Asian American. Shang-Chi, or should we say Sean, was content with being on parking duty and cracking jokes with his best friend, until the sudden arrival of the Ten Rings forced him to face his past.
How did you find me? I always know where my children are. Me against the world, I got my back against the wall.
Growing up with Xu Wenwu as his father and teacher took a toll on Shang-Chi. He had a microscopic view of the world at large due to his father's philosophies. Wenwu was on a mission to destroy the world, and Shang-Chi would have been his key instrument in fulfilling that mission. The knowledge of that truth, combined with the horrible feeling of taking another person's life at such a young age, created trauma that Shang-Chi had to suppress to survive the harsh reality of the world. In cultivating his human emotions, Shang-Chi had to dissociate from a lot of things that he had learned while living under his father's influence. While running away at such a young age probably scarred him for life, he needed to retain his humanity. If he had stayed with the Ten Rings organization, being run the way it was by his father, Shang-Chi's kung fu skills would have been expended in the criminal underbelly of the world. Rather than give in to the pressure and trauma from his childhood, Shang-Chi sought coping mechanisms that gave him an anchor to his humane feelings. Katie was also an important support system for Shang-Chi because she was his reminder of home, but also a comfort for him in San Francisco.
Start a new life.
You got this.
Thank you.
Shang-Chi had known about the villain ways of his father, but the existential crisis didn't fully set in until he was faced with being the bad guy in an actual scenario. Living and working in San Francisco groomed Shang-Chi's philosophy of life. He grew to find contentment in the simpler things of life, but it was never going to be that basic for him. Despite changing his name and getting a simpler job, Shang-Chi could not escape the impact of his origins.
What happened to your shirt?
Being Asian American, there is the constant struggle of not being Asian enough or American enough to fit in with either community. His lack of identity also shifted between his relationship with his father and his relationship with his sister, Jia Ling. He knew they weren't the same, but he couldn't immediately detach himself from the mindset of assuming that everyone from his past life was a bad person, except for his mother. Having to step into his responsibility as a superhero was a new curveball to Shang-Chi's life. The decision to defend the people of Ta Lo Village from his father's destructive plans was instinctive to Shang-Chi, but the road that led him to that point didn't come easily. Shang-Chi's entire mindset is based on being compassionate and taking responsibility for his loved ones. After running away from his family and essentially letting go of his title as heir to Wenwu's criminal dynasty, the context of being responsible changed a little bit for Shang-Chi. While he was raised to follow in his father's footsteps and ultimately restore the world to the ancient order from Wenwu's origins, the internal conflict, after realizing that life wasn't for him, was epic. Shang-Chi's identity, not just as a person, but as a leader, was muddled.
You are a product of all who came before you. The legacy of your family. You are your mother.
When the 10 rings came for his necklace, he knew from experience of working for the bad guys that the next target would be his sister. Getting called to action to defend Ta Lo was not a Herculean task for Shang-Chi, because despite running from the evil of his father's ways, he was still a leader at heart. Shang-Chi knew tough love more than anything else in the world. Being a master of Kung Fu came with a lot of discipline, but training under Wenwu definitely affected Shang-Chi's view towards work. Spoiler alert, Wenwu ended up sacrificing himself to protect Shang-Chi from the Dweller in the Darkness, aka the second villain in the plot, with Wenwu being the first, of course. But Shang-Chi didn't hoard the power, and Jia Ling ended up becoming the leader of the 10 rings.
They're waiting.
Throughout the ordeals and battles, literally and figuratively, Shang-Chi held on to his core goodness and fought for the things he believed in. He remained loyal to his loved ones, but he took the responsibility of being a hero completely in stride. A friend in need is a friend indeed, and that's practically the theme quote for Katie and Shang-Chi's friendship. Katie and Shang-Chi are two Asian Americans finding their way in San Francisco. They understand each other and they have each other's backs. When it comes to his family, Shang-Chi loved and respected his mother, and that love reflects in his relationship with his aunt, Ying-Nan. Shang-Chi doesn't have a large support system, but what his social circle lacks in quantity, it makes up for in quality. Shang-Chi grew up as the prince of an empire that contrasted his philosophies. He was able to escape his father's rule, but not his father's plans. He ended up going back to the Ta Lo village to defend the village from destruction that was imposing on it. Shang-Chi faced several challenges and had to make so many important decisions, but he let his passion for humanity go first, even when he was faced with the choice of taking his father's life. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us on the breakdown of Shang-Chi psychology. Take a moment to look at this other recent clip by Director's Choice, and be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that bright notification bell to get alerts for our latest videos.